Hi, Mr. Ramdas. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back.
Good afternoon.
Afternoon. Welcome back, students. I trust that you had an enjoyable lunch. Remember to type your questions in the chat. Up next, we have our first presenter for this afternoon session. His name is Mr. Eric Lewis. He is a curator for the curator for the Moruga Museum. And Mr. Lewis will tell us all about being a curator. Mr. Lewis, over to you.
Hi, everyone, and I'm Eric Lewis, and I'm happy to be part of this program here today. And a little bit about myself. I'm Eric Lewis. I live and I've lived here in Moruga. I'm from Moruga, the southern part of Trinidad, and where I'm from is a lot of culture and heritage and stuff, right? A curator, basically, this is a person who runs or operates a museum, and I'm the general curator, so I'm in charge of setting up the display at the museum. So, for example, we would have artifacts, and the artifacts are those objects which might be, may have been used by the Amerindians or the East Indians, the former enslaved, or, any remnant of an object relating to this type of history or historical period, as well as some of this stuff are scientific. So we have whale bones, fossils, it ranges almost from anything to everything that has a historic or scientific purpose, or geological as well, right? So basically, a curator would have to be someone who has a cross culture of knowledge on history, science, art, display, setup, and people also. So that is where that is concerned. So that is what I do here in Moruga at the Moruga Museum. I'm also the founder of the Moruga Museum. I'm also the founder of the National Cocoa and Chocolate Museum and Heritage Complex of Trinidad and Tobago. And so those are two of the institutions that I have running here and which I manage here in Moruga. And it's quite interesting. And, it's something that requires a lot of discipline and, discipline and, astuteness, because you always have to constantly be researching and, and be knowledgeable about the artifacts or whatever you're putting out to display. The next thing that I do also would be meeting people, and lots of people a lot of time. I mean, before COVID-19, we might, I may have encountered like 18,000 persons in 1 year, or that is at one museum, at the Moruga Museum. At the other museum, I would have met about, I think that one is 38,000 persons for the year at the other one. So, on average, like 50,000 persons you would come into contact with. More or less, students also would visit when entire schools would visit. So sometimes you may have like 200 students visiting at one time, or just family groups. And again, it's a career path that is quite interesting and quite, it's quite fascinating, because one, meeting people, I like meeting people, I like talking with people, I like sharing my knowledge in any area that I can. And the other thing is that I also like, continuous research and continuous studying and continuous self-assessment, and as well assessment for the work and of the work that I do. And most of all, I always like things to be new and reinvigorated. And that is what I experience as a curator of these museums. When I say experiencing things new, that would also mean new displays, new setups. That's always going to be that you need to make present for your audience. So when people visiting, you don't want to visit the museum and see the same thing over and over. Neither do I want to be the curator of that museum and see the same thing over and over either, because I too can also be, bored of my own display. So, we reset it. We have a storage room And in the storage, we might have some 1,000-year-old artifacts or 6,000-year-old artifact or something of that sort that would stimulate interest, or perhaps a coin, a gold coin, a silver coin, something that's going to stimulate interest. So when we bring out these new artifacts, we will invite people to visit. We might have a press release as well on that. And the next thing about being a curator is working the media, the social media, the national media, the regular media, with, Express, Newsday, the Guardian, whichever, as well as the television or radio stations, and utilizing all those different means of communication and dissemination of information. So a museum, and given the work that we have, most of it is for the dissemination of information, educating the public, and preserving the history and the culture of the area, or the history and culture of the world then, because from a museum, depending on the type of museum that you have, and given that you're a curator, that also would mean that you would want to, depending on your setup, you would have to ensure that you know what's going on around the world. So when other persons visit, let's say someone from France visit, and you have a French, something linked to a French connection, you might be able to be fluent and be able to speak to them. But okay, well, I recently heard that this is happening in France, and you want to link that artifact perhaps to this, like for example, we have a perfume collection from France, perfume bottle collection from early France, and it's silver and crystal, right? The bottle is silver and crystal. And perhaps you might want to give an example. Oh, it's like this, like what you have now in France, and you'd want to use the historical aspect of it to make that relational and give relation to what exists there today. And sometimes when we have functions or unveiling ceremonies, that's another thing too, that we may invite diplomats to visit or attend and be part of the unveiling ceremony, And I have realized that, being a curator has opened a lot of avenues to me, especially in meeting people and going to different places. And, sometimes you get to a certain place and someone might be like, hey, I met you before. And you're like, okay, where? At the Moruga Museum. So curators meet a lot of people. And if you're into people and if you're into that whole human relation aspect of things, that would also be something great that you might be willing to explore. And I know that the team that we are on is business, and a lot of people into business. And that's the next thing that I'm going to speak about. Museums are also considered business, right? And to have a good operational museum that's sustainable, you'd also have to have some sort of business skills or business related education or training that can also facilitate the better development of your museum, and your museum and the whole your museum experience, being a curator, ensuring that things are not just in existence for a year or 2 years, but that your project or your projects could be funded and continue to be funded as long as it exists. So some aspect of it would also be fundraising, and you'd have to spend money for upkeep. You'd need money for paying staff. You might want to get government intervention. And I know it's a different category of thing. It's not one of the common things that someone grows up and say, hey, I want to be a curator. But being a curator is something that I think I would have always wanted to be and do. And but the thing is, as a child, I didn't know the name of it. So I always wanted to be a researcher. I always wanted to find out new information. I always wanted to share that information. And I always wanted to see and put things out on display, and use that knowledge or my knowledgeable research to share that with the public. And so that whole field of being a curator and even business oriented has circulated around the field of being a curator at the Moruga Museum. Do you have any questions yet?
No questions as yet. Can we get a little tour? Is that possible? Can we see some of the artifacts? Are you in the museum now?
No, I'm not at the museum right now. and I'm hoping to be. I probably can try to get over there in about 3 minutes or so. But I'm
Okay.
also working on. I have some technical difficulties with my
Or your
with my
internet.
with my internet, and so basically I was just speaking to my service provider, and they had a whole big problem with it. I just ported from one service to the other, and that just messed up some stuff. But I think it can go through probably within, let's say, 5 minutes. If I get a 5-minute break, hopefully I'm able to have that done. You know?
So that if you get a 5-minute break, we may be able to get the tour. You're saying?
Yeah, the tour, and probably see if I can reactivate that plan again.
All right, well, that would be cool. Anybody on the chat, could you tell me whether we have any questions? Apparently students have not had, okay, no questions, Mr. Lewis, no questions so far. I found it rather interesting though, how as a curator, how you're able to meet so many people, you know, because there are people who are interested in history and as is science, as you said before. And I found it very interesting as well that you said you collected like perfume bottles from France. You know, so that was also very interesting. Someone asked, how does it feel to work at a museum?
It feels, well, it feels good. It feels good. It's always an adventure because you have no idea who you're going to be meeting or what these, people are up to, what their interests are directly. A person may say, okay, I'm interested in let's say, let me get some artifacts now off of my head. They might be interested in the Amerindian collection. And in the Amerindian collection, that also it varies from stone tools. It varies from stone tools, shards of pottery, bones of animals, bones of human bones, animal bones, shells, etc. And sometimes when they get there, they would forget a particular aspect of it, and then they will just be solely interested, for example, on the Adorno pieces. The Adorno pieces are those pieces of artifacts that that looks like the Mexican or the Mayan civilization stuff, where you see all these different artistic inscription on the artifacts, and they might just go off on that alone. And then another person might just be interested in the bones, like, whoa, this is human bones or these animal bones. This is quite interesting to see, what this is like. And another really interesting thing for me, what I like also, would be the diplomatic relations. And we meet a lot of ambassadors and dignitaries as well. And, a great part of that too is meeting the young people, the children. When they come and visit, like sometimes you have to use modern day terms so that they would understand what you're talking about. And I'll just use a simple one. For example, like the mortar and pestle, so when we are describing a mortar and pestle and what it's used for, we say to them, oh, the mortar and pestle is like an austerizer or a blender or a magic bullet. This is what people would use long ago to blend their foods or to crush it, and they'd be like, oh yeah, now they understand. But if you just say a mortar and pestle, a lot of them don't understand what it might be at times. So yeah, at the museum, it stimulates a lot of interest internally for me and intrinsically. At the same time, you are the one who is presenting and making things interesting and selling a story of civilizations past and of our ancestors who have inhabited here. And in Trinidad, we have so much and a wealth of history that it's sometimes heartbreaking that we don't fully understand our true culture and a lot of us on the various aspects of our historical culture. And that also runs straight into the natural heritage and the built heritage. The natural heritage would be like the environmental stuff. We have fossil sites in Trinidad where the possibility exists that there are items or artifacts that are of Jurassic age, right? And Jurassic age meaning it's since the existence of dinosaurs, which many people aren't aware of.
Excuse Mr. Lewis, speaking of dinosaurs, somebody had a question there. They were asking, are there any dinosaur fossils in the museum? Sorry.
We don't have any dinosaur fossils that I should say that we know of, but we do have petroglyphs and not petroglyphs, bivalves and gastropods. Gastropods are very old, and in the bivalve formation, in the sedimentation of the bivalves, all right, let me break this down easily. The sedimentation process would be a process under the water due to compaction and all of that, and the heavy pressure that will clump and cement, right, create a fossil, right, and everything will be locked in together. And in between that, you will have microorganisms existing in between that, or which would have existed then and there. And those microorganisms would have existed during the existence of dinosaurs, during the Jurassic period, which would be like, 120 million years ago or 200 million years ago and stuff like that.
Wow, interesting.
Yeah. At that fossil site, the possibility exists, though, that we can find some other larger items of Jurassic existence existing there, but the shortcoming with that would be we don't have enough persons willing to work to go and do that type of excavation. Those type of excavations take years, you need professionals, and most of all, you need funding. Now, a lot of the work that I would have done in Trinidad for over the years, I also do archaeological research, I also do some geological research as well, is that I do these things on my own, and I fund my projects myself, and I use alternative income and alternative sources to fund my adventures then, and it's actual adventures and actual exploration. So when you might see on TV or a show, or, on a movie or something, or like Indiana Jones going on an adventure. Well, those who know Indiana Jones or might have heard about him, you could check him up afterwards. But basically, Indiana Jones was a figure who would be exploring and going on adventures and so on and finding different things, right? And yes, you do find gold sometimes, you do find precious gems as well, or semi-precious rocks, etc. And yes, we have found some of those things in the past, and that's in the museum collection as well. And it's really, really fascinating, really fascinating. Like imagine coming into contact with whales, or whale bones, and you're the first and only person after however long to even come into contact with these things. And a lot of times at the museum, I'm the first person to come in contact then with some of those artifacts which are thousands of years old, because they might have been covered up or buried or sealed for a long period of time, and you're the one who opens it, sometimes.
Okay, speaking of thousands of years old, what is the oldest artifact that you might have there?
The oldest artifact that we'd have would be would be from the geological collection, the scientific geological collection, which would be the same thing that I spoke with you guys about, with the bivalves being interlocked between the sedimentation. The bivalves would be shells, right? Different types of shells that open and close like this. Those type of shells, and so those are bivalves because bi it's two, right? So it's like that. So those are some of the oldest, and that's 6 million years old. Then we have the gastropods, which are like around the era of 120 million years old, and those would be some of the oldest. And the microorganisms between that would be way older. So those would be the oldest for the scientific aspect. For the Amerindian or the historic period of human existence, our oldest artifact would be 6,000 years old, which would be part of not a part, but a whole piece of a petroglyph. And petroglyph would be the stone or rock art, right? Petro coming from rock and art. And the other coming up, the oldest Spanish artifact we have, it's over 200 years old. I can't remember the exact age. It's a Spanish silver coin, and it's one of the pieces of 8. And the pieces of 8 meant that it's a coin, right? And it's considered pirate's treasure, one of the pirate's treasure as well. And that is something quite interesting too. And that is over 250 years old. Yeah, over 250. Can't remember the exact date on the coin because we have an entire coin collection with hundreds of coins as well. So that would be,
How does one?
Mhm.
No, you go ahead. You go ahead. When you finish.
That would be how the timing and the dating of the artifacts are done. So we have different time periods. So you have like pre-human existence, which are in the hundred of millions or tens of millions of years old. And then you have like during the human existence, like 6,000 and 7,000 years old. And then you have like the pre-Columbian, which would be before the colonial experience or the colonial or Columbus's encounter with the New World, which would be from the 1490s, right? 1492, so it would be considered the 15th century. So before that would be considered pre-Columbian, and after that, post-Columbian would be after Columbus, and then they have post-colonial and pre-colonial. So all those are different dating spectrums that we use and terms that we use in museology or in curating.
Thank you. I've got yes. So someone wants to know, what is the largest animal bone you have found?
The largest animal bone that we have found and that we have at the museum is the whale jawbone. The whale jawbone is over 5 feet tall. It's like around 6 feet. And that's just one of the jawbones, like from here to here. And that's 6 feet in length. And that's the largest that we have there for the wild.
Thank you. Another question. How does one visit the museum? Do you have to make an appointment? How does people contact you?
Yeah, we have our online presence. We have Facebook. We also have a Google account as well, where you would find the contact information for the museum on it. And you make an appointment and you can visit with your, with solely or with your family, however you would prefer. And you can send us a WhatsApp to 355-8319, or you can also send us an email to Moruga Museum or Coco Museum tt@gmail.com. They are both Gmail accounts. And if you need further information, you can check out our Facebook page at Moruga Museum. And we also have another account for National Cocoa and Chocolate Museum, and we also have Cocoa Museum TT on Facebook. Cocoa Museum on Facebook as well. So either of those two Facebook presence or Facebook accounts, or either of the two Gmail accounts. Moruga Museum at gmail.com or Cocoa Museum TT at gmail.com. We also have websites as well, which you could look up to and get additional information.
Question again. Someone wants to know, what inspired you to become a curator? What inspired you?
My inspiration would have been my love for history, and I see the need that Trinidad's culture should be preserved, right? And because of all of that, I wanted to do something that I could do and give back to the country, give back to the world in that sense. And having traveled to different parts of the world, every country that I've been to, every town that I've been to in other countries, I would see museums, and everyone is going to recommend, okay, you need to visit this museum, you need to visit that museum. No one ever says you need to visit the mall. No one ever says you need to visit the bars, right? But they always say you need to visit the museum. So that too has propelled me to come back to Trinidad and do something that would really make invaluable contribution to the community and something that would be long-standing too. I saw two other questions.
Someone wants to know. Yes, someone asks, will they be paid, I guess, if they gift the museum with something valuable?
Yeah, yes, we do that. Sometimes some of the artifacts that we acquire, we pay for them, and others are donated, and others are found on archaeological digs throughout the country. Next question.
Yes, the Cocoa Museum. What are some of the things stored in the Cocoa Museum?
Wow, the Cocoa Museum is one of the most interesting museums, I should say, that exist in this country. And for more than one reason. One, The Cocoa Museum is museum within a museum. That's one, because the building itself that stores the museum collection used to be an actual horse stable and barracks from the very early 1900s up till, from the very late 1800s up to the late 1900s. And that is remarkable that a building like that is still in existence today. At the Cocoa Museum, we also have 2 cocoa houses, and each one of them is 100 years old or over 100 years old. And the next thing is that at the Cocoa Museum, we also have the natural wonders of the pitch pools, sulfur spring, and spring pool on the same compound. So we have the actual wells that people would draw water from long ago to water the estate. The water cisterns we also have from 1913. We have the cocoa baskets, the actual cocoa shovel. We have records from the early 1900s, which is, that's super fantastic. Just seeing the records and the writing, the handwriting from the early 1900s on display. We have hundreds of books and documents, maps included, estate labor abstract, the estate labor pay list. You could see what a person did for every day of their life as they lived and worked on that estate. Those are the records that we have there as well. We also have some photographs, which we have not displayed yet, and that would be part 2 of perhaps next year when we open the art gallery at the Cocoa Museum. Those are some things that we have on display.
All right, final question for you. Someone wants to know, how do you keep your items preserved?
Depending on what the items are. For example, if it's documents, those items would best be preserved in the form of digitization, number 1. So digitize stuff. So going with the modern way of sharing and safeguarding information, digitization is great. The second thing that you would do, some of the items would have to be resin coated, depending on what it is. For example, we might receive items or artifacts that's already corroding, like bones that's already in the deterioration state, or metal pieces, and we may want to use resin or resin coated so that it's preserved, or we might have them in glass cases, eliminate the oxygen content inside there. Oxygen is something that's going to deteriorate metals and some of the other stuff too, so you want to remove the oxygen from it by getting all the oxygen out of it. That's one to process. Some of them you have to put in, depending on what it is again, like if it's organs, you might want to put it in alcohol or formaldehyde, and even some of the creatures too, like snakes, you could put it in alcohol. And some of the processes that we do, we also mix some of it with the old time ways as well, which I find some of them work well, and some of them aren't as efficient. But another thing that you can do, like for hides and so on, for animal furs, you could also use potash and a drying agent and a preservative, mixed together or combined or applied separately, depending on what it is, to preserve skins, like, let's say snake skin or some kind of rare creature skin, like ocelot or a wild dog, as they say, so you could use those things to preserve the skin. Our next thing is the museum ethics, that if you're retrieving any creature that might be, considered an endangered species, etc., or nearing extinction, which is what endangered species means, you would the museum has a license to do that, right? But the next thing is that it's to be obtained ethically. Ethical obtaining of an artifact or an item would mean, let's speak specifically for the hides of animals, for example. For example, if it's a snake, you'd want to make sure that the snake would have been killed, let's say, by an accident. Not that you're going to kill that snake to, preserve it, but that some accident may have occurred, or one of those wild waterfowl birds might have been run over and so on. And these are actual cases that we have found and been able to preserve some of those, the carcass or the remains of the animals, and taxify it. So we do taxidermy sometimes, where we get the bones or the skin or whatever part or parts or item of the animal that we might want. So like, for example, like snakes, like I was doing a whole lot of stuff with snakes one time, and we got a dead mapapi. And what we did is that we put it in the alcohol, and we also remove all the intestines, put the intestines in the organs, the different organs, the intestines and so on in different bottles and so on. So you can see it, you can measure it, you would have an idea of what it looks like and, its composition as well. But it's a really, really broad thing that you really have to know a lot of different stuff, from preservation to identification, and again, sharing that information.
So thank you very much, Mr. Lewis. It was very, very interesting. Before you go, I have one more question. Someone wanted to know if you have anything Egyptian in the museum.
I don't think we have anything Egyptian at the museum, at either of the museum, because the Egyptian presence here hasn't been something that's like in relation to the presence of the Amerindians or the Spanish presence or the English presence, and even with our African descendants that settled here, they didn't come here to Trinidad with a briefcase, they didn't come with a suitcase and say, okay, I'm going to be a slave, so I'm going to have stuff packed up to go to this next country. You understand? So you wouldn't have a lot of items directly from Africa from a historical perspective in the terms of, coming from Africa from during the slavery time to Trinidad. So we wouldn't have that. However, I have seen a lot of the Egyptian artifacts in different parts of the world, in America, in Rome, in Italy, at the Vatican Museum, which is really, really amazing, should be visited. There's a huge Egyptian collection there, as well as the Metropolitan Museum in New York also has a huge Egyptian collection outside of Egypt in those two museums, which are two of the best that I've seen. And in the British Museum also, you have some really good collection of the Egyptian, presence and influence there as well.
So we want to thank you again very much, Mr. Lewis, for taking the time off to share with us today. We know that you will be back again with the museum on Wednesday and Friday. So maybe one of those days we will be able to get the tour of the museum. So I thank you very much for sharing with us. The presentation was very, very interesting. Thank you so much.
You're most welcome. And keep in mind, it's two museums. So perhaps one day I can do the Maruga Museum and the next day the Cocoa Museum, or vice versa, so that you guys can get a view of the spread. But I mean, the Cocoa Museum, it's huge. It's a huge spread. So it will take, a few minutes, to go through it.
But that would be great. Okay, then. So we'll see you tomorrow in your next capacity. Don't forget.
Thank you. Take care.
All right,
bye.
Then. Take care. Bye. We have our next presenter up next. Mr. Sean Robinson of Tobago Dive Experience. Tobago Dive Experience is here. I'm not sure it's Mr. Robinson, but Tobago Dive Experience is here. And we welcome you. I'm sorry, ma'am. I'm sorry. My apologies. But Tobago Dive Experience, we welcome you.
No problem at all. Mr. Robinson is here now.
Welcome, Mr. Robinson. It's good to have you on today. Our students are anxious. They are waiting. The floor is yours. You take over.
All right. Good afternoon, kids. My name is Sean Robinson, and I represent Tobago Dive Experience. And my background is that of a commercial diver and also a scuba instructor. So I'm going to be speaking to you all today a little bit about the whole jobs in the marine sector. And I wanted you all to pay close attention to me as I speak, because what is amazing, we live on an island, which is a rock surrounded by water, but only 20% or 25% of the population of this country can swim. Now, all the natural resources of this country that runs this country, the oil and gas, the majority of that comes from the offshore industry, especially off the east coast of Trinidad. What is very, very sad is that when I look at a lot of the people who work in this industry, they are not from Trinidad. They are foreigners. So it seems that we have designed educational system and not to cater to Trinidadians. So let me speak a little bit about that industry and the type of jobs and stuff that we have up there. So everything that goes into the sea, all the platforms that pump out all this oil and gas, these things need to be built. They need to be put down. And that's where underwater divers come into the play. Sadly enough, when I became a commercial diver in 1983, I was the first licensed commercial diver in this country. And now we are in 2021, and there's maybe 10 licensed commercial divers in this country, if so much. So every time we have a major job to do offshore, we now have to bring divers in from foreign countries to do jobs there. So sometimes I wonder if we live in the desert, because again, we need all the offshore supply vessels that supply goods and services to the offshore area. Nearly every single captain that runs one of those vessels are foreigners. So it is amazing that we cannot even produce sufficient numbers of captains and crew boats, but we live on an island. If we lived in a desert, we wouldn't need those skills. We need skills to how to drive a camel. So maybe that's what they want to teach us, to drive camels when we need captains and sailors and the other crew members. So as you go through your educational journey, I need you to start and to get your parents to start thinking outside of the box. And let us look at the jobs that are created in the marine industry. There's a worldwide shortage of marine biologists, worldwide, and marine scientists, because for many, many years, these jobs were not thought of being profitable jobs. So now we have a shortage of these jobs. Here in Trinidad, if you're looking at engineering, we don't even have 2 marine engineers in Trinidad. Again, we must be living in a desert, because I don't own any desert, you won't need marine engineers. So it is quite confusing to me, and I guess will be more confusing for you all to be able to understand why, when we creating all these brilliant engineers, we can't create marine engineers as well. So again, when we need to design and build something that needs to go into the sea, we have to import marine engineers into the country. That is absolutely shameful. I cannot even find a proper maritime lawyer in this country. You could swear, again, we live in the desert, that we have all types of lawyers. And if you try to find a maritime lawyer, it does not exist. In this country, we now have to bring somebody else in to consult on maritime laws and maritime issues. Many, many years ago, in this country, we pioneered fish farming with particular interest in tilapia. We did nothing with it. All the technology then left Trinidad. Most of the leading tilapia farms that were established around the world is brain power from Trinidad, through the Institute of Marine Affairs, that went on to creating and establishing these fish farms. So 60 years later, we now are looking at fish farming, and all the technology and a lot of what we need and the inputs, we're going to have to bring that from outside once again. So I'm just using a few examples here for you kids, for you to understand where I'm coming from in relation to this. So in the underwater world, which is getting back to my side of the coin. I train young people to dive, and we actually start training divers from as young now as 10 years old, and getting them exposed to the marine environment so that you quickly find out this underwater environment is not as scary as people make it out to be. It's a wonderful experience. So the first step is learning to dive. And then from there now, as you get older, you can now look at all the other careers to deal with commercial diving. And these jobs are extremely high paying jobs. But again, it needs the necessary training for you to get on that path, becoming a commercial diver, or eventually becoming an instructor, scuba instructor like myself. So as you look at the whole industry, tourism, for example, in Tobago is rated as one of the best dive destinations in the world. We are in the top 10. And all the dive shops, we need diving instructors, we need dive masters. We also need boat captains to operate our boats here. And it is a pity that we sometimes cannot find all the necessary crew right here in Tobago. Once again, we at times have to import workers from outside. So in this new age and the diversification as we look to diverse economy, you all need to take a look and start to do your research. Although you all have your little, now learn how to Google up stuff and start to look at careers in the marine industry. Now, the nice thing with the marine industry, kids, is, as you all know, 3/4 of the planet is water. So during my career, I did work in 57 countries around the world. So it does not limit you to only working in Trinidad. These skills are needed worldwide, especially now in the marine, anything to do with the marine industry. There is a shortage worldwide, right? I give you a good example, kids. My son is a marine biologist, born and bred in Tobago, and did his university in England. And just recently, he was headhunted by the government of Norway. Norway is very much like Trinidad in relation to they built the economy on oil and gas. But now they are diversifying the economy. So they're moving away from the oil and gas and looking at new investments. And their big investment now is in fish farming. So the government is investing billions of dollars into fish farming. He was just headhunted to come and lead some research and development work within the fish farming industry. And then they are asking him if he could help them to find other young marine biologists to come across and work, because there is a shortage. They need hundreds of employees and they are struggling to find them. So again, take a look, Google up, take a look at what this fish industry means. It's a huge industry, right? There are many, many opportunities. If you like photography, you like videography, when you watch those documentaries on TV, you will see it's us divers who have to be down there doing it. So basically, being a diver is your beginning of a journey of work underwater, and then it depends on the skill sets that you have. Then decides where you're going to apply these skill sets. I hope I'm not going too quickly for you all, but there's a short time and there's so many things we could actually discuss about the marine industry. So I'm trying to narrow it down now to just right here in country. So some of the jobs you would hear is like underwater welding, there's inspection work, right? Every ship, every pipeline, every platform around the waters of Trinidad has to be inspected on a regular basis. And this is where divers come in, or you become what you call a ROV technician, which is using what we call remote operated vehicles. I just saw somebody ask me if fish farming is profitable. Well, I love that question. 100 years ago, fish farming, fish was considered to be poor man's protein. But if recently, over the last couple of years, you go to buy a pound of fish, it's very difficult now to say poor man's protein anymore. It seems that fish now becoming a rich man's protein. We have destroyed 90% of the wild stocks of the ocean in the last 100 years. So that gives you an idea of what I'm saying. It is exceedingly profitable, but you have to have the know-how. So if you were to take some of those Caroni lands that are left there abandoned, 1 acre of land under fish farming is probably going to yield 20 times what any acre of any crop that you can plant. And there's a worldwide global shortage of fish. And that's why so many countries are now investing heavily into the technology behind fish farming, i.e. Norway, Canada, Chile, right? So again, a lot of the equipment we use are very, very specialized equipment when we go diving. And I saw somebody ask, what are wetsuits made of? The wetsuits we use in generally are made out of neoprene rubber. Right? The other things that we look at right now is with this whole global warming and dealing with rising sea levels, coastal protection because of coastal erosion is now becoming a major issue. So we're going to need the brains of the marine engineers to solve these problems as we go forward. And it's, as I said, a big shortage. All right, so again, at this point, if you all have any questions for me, now is probably a good time for me to have a little interaction as we go through this process, because the marine environment to most of you all will be a very sort of new place. Although we grew up on an island, it seems that we know very little about the marine environments that we live in. All right. In Tobago here in particular, we can literally build a diving industry around a whole tourism and just around the diving industry. I was just asked another question. What's the deepest dive I've done? If we speak in meters, it's 150 meters. If we speak in feet, it's probably going to be about 475 feet, give or take. Right? So the whole thing about that diving experience, it's basically when we teaching you to dive, we have a combination of classroom, pool work, and then we bring you to Tobago for a weekend, and you're going to do 4 dives in the open ocean here. But when you're learning to dive, the maximum depth we take anybody to is a max of 18 meters or 60 feet. And as I said earlier, you can start diving from the age of 10. So we actually do run programs right now at the different high schools in Trinidad. If you're from the South, we run programs at Naparima College, Presentation College, and I saw another great idea there. If I assist in oil spill cleanups. What is really funny is, again, every time we have a major oil spill in Trinidad, we normally have to bring down expertise out of Canada or the States to help us clean up our mess. You'll want to believe after 100 years, of being in the oil industry will have the necessary expertise for it. In the oceans, only 5% of the ocean floors have been researched. So there's so much about the ocean that we are still learning every day, and so much that we are finding. We find new species all the time. All right. So again, it's a very exciting time for youngsters. I was lucky that I grew up in the sea, and as a young man, that's all I wanted to do was participate in the marine environment, and I've been able to do that both as from a fisherman's point of view. You can make a tremendous career being a fisherman, scuba instructor, commercial diver. There's so many things. I'm also a boat captain. So there are many, many very good paying jobs right here in this country. And you just have to set a career path towards getting into those fields. So just like you want to be a doctor and you have to get your chemistry and your physics and whatever you need, you need to start doing research there. All right, so keep the questions coming as we are chatting, so we can make this thing a little more interactive with you all. And I just so blabber on for the rest of the time we have here. All right. There are so many different specialties in diving that one can do, including photography, videography. All right. So as we go along on your going on this journey, please, everybody, do me a favor. Start by just learning to swim. Just learn to swim, and then start to research this whole thing called diving. You get some of the best training in the world is done here. Somebody asked what type of exotic fish. Well, what makes Tobago famous is we have a lot of the manta rays that swim in the waters around Tobago. We get whale sharks that come through the waters here. We have many different types of sharks over here that you can look at. We have cool things like the octopus, big squid, lots of turtles that we see here as well. So Trinidad and Tobago, that is an interesting one. Can fish farms have sharks? Well, again, good question. A lot of research is going on into sharks. The problem is that sharks take a long time before they mature. So it is not an ideal fish for use in fish farming. So one of the most popular fish used in fish farming, especially for saltwater fish, is cobia. And up in the colder areas, they use the king salmon. But there's many, many research programs going on with different species now. So as time goes along, you'll see that being diversified. They're doing oysters, clams, lobsters. Have you ever been injured while diving? No, I've never had any serious injury from diving. Diving is an exceptionally safe sport, especially if you are well trained. This is my 50th year of diving, and I've done over 30,000 dives. So I can tell you it's a very safe sport if you know what you're doing and you're well trained. Yes, it could be dangerous, very dangerous if you don't know what you're doing, but that just about applies to just about everything else we do in life. So we run programs, as I was saying earlier, around different parts of Trinidad, and we run programs right here in Tobago. So if you take my contact details, just if for the kids, if you want to have your parents or anybody chat with me, you can take my personal cell number, which is 688-5071. So I can answer for those who want to ask me more questions after this is done. I'm always open to chatting with kids. The average cost of a dive program is about $4,000. And that would include we supply you with all the equipment. That's the classroom, it's the pool work, and then it's all the equipment for going when we're ready to go diving. Right? The prices come down a little bit if we're dealing with groups, but that is generally an average price to begin learning to dive. So you have many courses that you will need to do before you get ready to become a professional. So the starting course is $4,000, and then you have other courses we do after that, and then gets you ready to become what we call a dive master, which is by the time you reach 18, and then you can also from there become an instructor. And as I said, through my operation here in Tobago, you no longer have to go outside. We run these programs right here in Tobago, so it's much cheaper than having to leave to go abroad. What is the most ancient thing you have been seeing? Well, again, I mean, when we look at ancient creatures, we tend to look at, the whales that, live up to 100 plus years. I have been diving on old wrecks way back. Some of these wrecks go back to the 16th, 17th century. Wrecks that would have at some times, been carrying gold or other supplies from South America. So that's a whole other area of diving called underwater archaeology. So that's another specialized field underwater. And those are the people who go and look at these old wrecks and try to find these wrecks and see what they have on them. So, well, that's my my half an hour. They're up right now. So I think it's a good time now to start asking some questions and the floor to some questions from you. Whilst I'm waiting for you all to send me some questions, one of the things I would like you all to stop doing, have you ever discussed it? I have found some stuff, nothing too valuable as yet, but like everybody, I keep looking, right? But the treasure is just to go underwater and see the beautiful underwater world that we have here today. So I would like you all to do me one favor and stop eating sharks, right? Sharks are becoming endangered, and they are very valuable to the ecosystem, and we need to stop eating them. All right. So when you go to Maracas, whether a shark and redfish or a shark and kingfish or something else, but let us try to join the rest of the world in putting a ban to all the shark fishing around our waters to help protect the environment. And that is something we need to be very, very conscious about, is how we treat our environment as we go forward. Because you look at all these global summits you're having now and this global warming. So each one of you all now have to do your part to ensure that when you grow up, you will inherit a sustainable environment. So if there's any more questions, let me know now. If not,
Thank you, Mr. Robinson. Students,
Sure.
please remember to type your questions in the chat. Mr. Robinson is waiting.
yeah.
I think there are no other questions, Mr. Robinson, but I really want to thank you for sharing with us today. I particularly want to thank you for all the jobs you have mentioned in the marine sector. I will now challenge the students to go and do some research. So instead of just becoming a lawyer, a criminal lawyer or a civil lawyer that we're accustomed to, there's need for maritime lawyers, underwater welders, marine biologists, inspectors, marine engineers. Those are some new and different fields you guys can get into. And you can do some research. Do some research on them when you at the end of the career fair today. So, Mr. Robertson, thank you so much for sharing with us. It was
a
really,
pleasure.
really interesting.
It's an absolute pleasure. And again, thank you for inviting me. And as I said before, I give them my telephone number. So if the kids or the parents or anybody want to chat with me as time goes along. I just see a question. How long can you dive with oxygen? First of all, we do not use pure oxygen when we go diving. We use normal air, which is the air that you breathe. So how long it also, well, how long we can dive is dependent on how deep we dive, is how long we can spend. So there's a question that there's no finite answer to. Good.
Any more questions, children, students? Any more questions?
If,
Yeah, okay. None at this time. I think that's it.
okay. Well, thank you. And have a nice
Thank you
day.
so much for taking time and sharing with us. We were enlightened.
Okay. Bye.
Bye. Thanks again. So students, now we have a quiz coming up. We have a correct quiz now. When you answer, I'm kind this time, so we're doing multiple choice. When you answer the question, I need you to put the name of the initial of your school. So let's suppose your school is Penal Rock Hindu, you put PRH and your answer. If your school is Chatham Government, you put CG and your answer. Yes? So let's go. The first question. What do you call someone who creates maps? Is it A, a fowler, B, a copyist, C, a cartographer, or D, a lithographer? A, fowler, B, copyist, C, cartographer, D, lithographer. Put your answer. You just have to put the initial for me. A, B, C, or D will be your answer next to the name of your school. Hurry up, hurry up. Guys, are you there? What do you call someone who creates map? Don't try to Google the answer, you know. Hey, I'm seeing you guys. You're not using your school initials, but the school initials. So I would know if your school is still present. But your school initials and your answer, which will either be A, B, C, or D. I'm getting C, all right? C is correct. C is correct. Good job. Pinara Hindu, C is correct. Good job. So someone who creates map is called a cartographer. Great job, guys. Next one. Remember, this is a career fair. We're learning stuff as well. Someone who deals in men's clothing and accessories is known as what? A gaunter, G-A-U-N-T-E-R, a haberdasher, a gold better, or a footman. So that is A, gaunter, B, haberdasher, C, gold better, or D, a footman. Let's see you, let's see you. Keep it coming, keep it coming. Nothing yet. Come on, guys, think about it. Someone who deals in men's clothing and accessories. This is a learning experience for me too. Yes, B is the answer. What school is that do? I'm just seeing B, no initial. So that will be B from Casper School. Oh, Captiville. Good job, Captiville. Next one. A beekeeper is also known by this name. A, buzz boss. Guys, I'm sorry about that, guys. Yes. So as I was saying, a beekeeper is also known as A, a buzz boss, B, an apiarist, C, a waxologist, or D, a honeyward. A, buzz boss, B, apiarist, C, waxologist, or D, a honeyward. Quickly, let's have your answers. Don't forget to put the initial of your school just before you answer the question. Very good. Yes, the answer is B, an apiarist. Good job, good job. Next one. A person who makes stringed instruments, such as guitars, is called A, a stringer, B, a glazier, C, a forger, or D, a luther. Again, a person who makes string instruments such as guitars is called A, stringer, B, a glazier, C, a forger, or D, a luther. Remember, name of your school and A, B, C, or D for your answer. A, no. No, it's not A, it's not a stringer. But keep it coming, guys. Yes, it's a luther. D, it's a luther. Good. Now this one should be easy. A coffee artist is called a barback. Oh, sorry. A coffee artist is called A, barback, B, a coffee chef, C, a barista, or D, a decaffeinator. A coffee artist, so this is someone who specializes in coffee. And that I definitely knew this answer. This person is called A, barback. Oh no, I have not seen the answer yet. Don't forget to put up the name of your school, for the initials of your school and the answer. I'm waiting. Yes, the answer is C, a barista. All right. Number 6. What do you call a person who draws blood? What do you call a person who draws blood? A, a phlebotomist, B, a blood drawer, C, a clutter, or D, a bandster. What do you call a person who draws blood? A, a phlebotomist, B, a blood drawer, C, a clutter, or D, a bandster. And all these new names we're learning, there are also new careers that we're learning. Okay, guys? Answer. I'm waiting on the answer. Answer. I'm waiting on the answer. So I'm not going to say anything yet, because I think people are just guessing and they're hoping if I eliminate one by the process of elimination, they will get the correct thing. I'm giving you one more chance, guys. One more chance to get this correct answer. Na, 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 na. All right, guys, so this one is called a phlebotomist. A phlebotomist, the answer is A. The answer is A. Number 7, someone who works with copper might be called a brazier, an alchemist, a metallist, or a blacksmith. Someone who works with copper might be called A, a brazier, B, an alchemist, C, a metallist, or D, a blacksmith. Answer, answer, answer. I'm waiting on those answers. Come on, guys. Not seeing my answer just yet. One more chance. Yes, the answer is A, a brazier. Yeah, this was a learning experience for me too. I was surprised. Number 8, someone who makes candles. And did you guys know there was a name for someone who makes candles? So we had Miss Mohip this morning. So someone who makes candles is called A, Madeira, B, a canner, C, a chandler, or D, an amora. Let me go over that again. Someone who makes candles is called A, Madeira, B, a canner, C, a chandler, or D, an amora. Yeah. Keep it coming. I'm looking for the correct answer. I'm looking for the correct answer. La, 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 la. Remember, put the name of your school and the answer. Yes, so the answer is a chandler. Yeah, someone who makes candles is called a chandler. Number 9, a person who repairs shoes is called A, farrier, B, a cobbler, C, a leatherman, or D, a lacer. Someone who repairs shoes is called A, farrier, B, a cobbler, C, a leatherman, or D, a lacer. Let's see those answers coming up, coming up. Keep the answers coming. Keep the answers coming. You know what? I'm going to wait to see if I see more than one correct answer. Give more people a chance. I have not seen a correct answer yet. I'm waiting on the correct answer. Yes, the answer is B, a cobbler. And the 10th and final question is, a wine expert is called, a wine expert is called A, wine taster, B, a bartender, C, a sommelier, or D, a patron. A wine, a person, sorry, a wine expert is called A wine taster, B, a bartender, C, a sommelier, or D, a patron. So let's see. All right, I took my eye off the screen there for a while. Put your answers back up again, guys. Let me see. So I've not seen the correct answer yet. Put your answers up again, sorry. Okay, keep it coming. Keep it coming, guys, keep it coming. Next. Yeah. The answer is C. The answer is C. Great. So you all did pretty well. We all learned something new today. We will do some more like these tomorrow when we meet with our next teams. We're going to see how well they do on this topic. I hope you guys had a wonderful day today with us. Do you all have any questions before we end today's session? Mr. Robinson was our last presenter from Dive Experience. Any questions? Feel free to type it in the chat. Remember, when you get home to research, marine biologists, marine engineer, underwater welders, marine lawyers, inspectors, and see what are some of the skills, the qualifications that you may need to enter such a field. Okay. Ms. Cooper, do we have any questions coming through? I have not seen anything. Okay, so we have no questions. I want to thank you guys for joining us today on this our very first virtual career fair. I trust that you will inform, you will educated, and that you did discover something new today. Remember, group 1, you will be joining us again on Wednesday. Wednesday is your next day with us, group 1. So I trust that you guys will enjoy the rest of your afternoon. I want to thank you again and thank your teachers and your principals and your parents for participating in this wonderful event. I hope you guys had fun. Have a good afternoon, guys. You are dismissed. Until we see you again on Wednesday, God's willing.